Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the March briefing on internet governance. Also, a warm welcome for our colleagues who are joining us online. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you too. So my name is Borg Psaila. I am the editor of the GIP Digital Watch Observatory, and together with Professor Jovan Kurbalija, the director of DiploFoundation and the head of the Geneva Internet Platform, we'll take a look at what happened in digital policy in March. With us also is Dr. Roxana Radu, who will be our online moderator. So if there are any questions from our online colleagues, please do ask your questions, and Roxana will make sure to forward the questions to Jovan and myself. I believe we can start by taking a look at the main events that happened in March. If we can go to the first slide. Quite a long month, I would say, with quite a few important events. I'll just go through them and mention one of them in particular. So we had the EBU Big Data Week here in Geneva. Our team reported from the event. The UN Human Rights Council spread over quite a few weeks. Reports also from side events related to the Human Rights Council. There was the first meeting of the Council of Europe, Human Rights Dimension of Automated Data, quite a long name, data processing and different forms of artificial intelligence. A member from our team was there also. ICANN 61 in San Juan, and last week in parallel there were the open consultations and the multi-stakeholder advisory group meeting of the IGF in parallel with WSIS Forum Week, which this year came earlier. Last year it was in June, this year it was in March. And our team reported quite extensively from the WSIS Forum Week. The team of close to 50 rapporteurs and other staff helping on the just-in-time reporting initiative from all over the world. We had session reports online on the observatory uploaded just a few hours after the end of each session, and we have just published the final report, the summary report from the WSIS Forum, which has a thematic summary of all the issues that were discussed. I invite you to download this from the observatory, and I'll refer a little bit on this in a few minutes. We'll zoom into the developments now. So we'll take a look. Jovan will take a look at the first quarter of the year, and then we'll zoom into March. But I'll start with a few developments that took place in March. So the barometer analyzes, as you know, the prominence of issues 1 month in comparison with the previous month, and we can see quite a few issues that have increased prominence this month. Sustainable development, for example, and this relates to the WSIS Forum that I just talked about. We saw two trends based on our reporting from the WSIS Forum. You'll read about this in the report. One of the trends is that development is, there is less and less difference between development and the other policy issues, probably because new technologies are opening more issues and are being discussed in the light of other issues. So we can see that development is being discussed in close connections with several other issues. And the second trend that we saw was that the issues that were traditionally on the outer margins of the WSIS Forum this year were discussed more and more. So there were discussions on cybersecurity, on privacy, Digital commerce and trade, usually they are discussed, let's say, more in IGF circles. That is where we traditionally see these discussions. But at WITIS this year, we saw these discussions more and more. And we could compare this based on the analysis that we did, based on our reports and the actual discussions that took place. All of this is in the report, so I invite you to read that. I'll go very quickly through the other updates. On e-commerce, we saw that Uber has a few problems in countries yet again. So there are licensing problems in Turkey and in Egypt, and at the same time, it is trying to comply with the regulations in London and in Barcelona. In Southeast Asia, Uber actually sold its operations to its competitor Grab. So Uber actually pulled out of Southeast Asia, which was quite a surprise. The plurilateral e-commerce group met in March. It was mostly formalities, but this is the same group of 70 countries that in December they agreed to initiate exploratory work towards future negotiation on trade-related aspects. Moving on to digital rights, we noticed, and I'm sure that you noticed also, that more companies are trying to comply with the GDPR, the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, which comes into effect on the 25th of May. So the date is fast approaching now, and a lot of us are receiving notifications from the companies to notifying us that they have updated their terms of service. So we're seeing more of that this month, and we know that ICANN also proposed an interim model for the registries and registrars to make sure that it's related to the GTLD, generic top-level domains, that they ensure compliance with the GDPR and at the same time with the ICANN policies. Moving on to net neutrality, more petitions there. We saw a few months ago that the FCC decided to roll back its open internet order, so we saw even more petitions this month from another group of companies. And on new technologies, and here I'll just mention that with one exception, which is the incident that Jovan will talk about, it's more or less more of the same. New developments, new studies, and new regulations, or the start of regulations to see how to take full advantage of artificial intelligence and all the other emerging technologies. I say with one exception, but Jovan will go through the specific trends in a moment. And I think we've covered the very, very main developments in digital policy in March. And this is where I'll give the floor to you, Jovan, to take us through a review of the first quarter of 2008, and to tell us what the trends in March were. So over to you.
Thank you, Steph. No, it's great to have you today here. I can see that you made an effort. The holidays, in some schools, holidays started. Therefore, still great. We had some sunny spells in the morning and yesterday, but today is cloudy. Special thanks to our colleagues worldwide who are joining. I'm sure from very sunny places, but also places with some snow on the streets. What Steph mentioned now in the summary about the main barometer developments is a good basis to make a reflection and some sort of zoom out reflection what is going on generally in digital policy. And we are closing the first quarter, and some predictions that we made at the beginning of the year are realizing. It wasn't that difficult to make predictions. It was more some sort of extrapolation. And we can see the strong trend towards the centrality of digital discussions in various fora. I'm a big fan of The Economist, and The Economist, we are following Economist. By the way, internally in Diplo, all Economist articles are annotated, we discussed them, and they passed the various tests throughout the history in covering the Balkans, where I'm coming from, to digital issues in a very, very balanced way. What we noticed is that out of the 12 cover pages of The Economist, since the beginning of the year, 5 have been dedicated to digital issues, ranging from Next Frontier to New Titans, discussing the big Facebook companies. This is a very interesting article. I don't know if Economist is moving in some sort of future telling or sort of crystal ball exercises, but basically the text that they wrote was the warning to Mr. Zuckerberg to move very, very fast with reform and generally to the internet company. Then they had issue dedicated to data and medicine, Dr. Yu, and the battle for digital supremacy, mainly analyzing the interplay between China and the United States when it comes to digital issues, and the epic fail, which was this very, very interesting cover from the last issue. In addition to the cover pages, we had 2 dedicated special reports in 2 months, one on the future of weapons, basically discussing autonomous weapons, and second on the driverless cars of autonomous vehicles. So it is clear that in some sort of, if you can consider The Economist as a reflection of the global thinking of trends in covering policy issues, that digital is becoming the mainstream. And I tweeted jokingly that it may become not The Economist, but the digital economist, because it is moving more and more in this direction. Therefore, digital is on the front pages. Digital is moving into the fora of international meetings. It is moving also into the, let's say, the basis of society. I often say that quote, that real anecdote, when I wrote my first book on internet governance back in 2004, my neighbors, friends, relatives were calling me to fix their printers. Because you're dealing something with computers, why you don't come and fix my printers, install software, and do these things? I usually tried. I'm not that good with the practical technology, but I usually try to help them. Today you can see the discussion is becoming much more nuanced, especially during after the Facebook Cambridge Analytics revelation, and discussion on taxation, discussion on the services. Therefore, digital issues are coming in the forefront of the citizens' concern. They are not anymore abstract considerations. Next slide. Now, for those of you who attended Diplo courses, I've been bothering my students with this triangle very often, but this triangle is becoming really the core of the current discussion on the internet. In this triangle, as you can see, you have us users on the top, you have on one side internet industry, and you have vendors. And in this interplay, we as users, willingly, unwillingly, some people say that this is the Faustian bargain that we make with the internet companies. We give our data in exchange for non-monetized services, or you can call it free services, by using Google, by using Facebook, by using Twitter, and other companies. They, in this triangle, as we are now seeing from the latest developments, they exchange it with the vendors. They basically sell data for advertising, and then vendors sell us the goods and they get the money. This is the core of the internet business model, and what we have been facing since the beginning of the year, especially over the last few weeks, are attempts of governments and international organizations and companies, I would say, to normalize the regulatory aspect of that. Because when you don't have a direct exchange of a monetary counter value between us and Google and Facebook, you cannot easily apply the question of consumer protection, taxation, as we'll see later on, or even anti-monopoly rules, because US anti-monopoly rules argue that as long as the customer, final user, is not in disadvantaged position, everything is fine. Europeans are much more sophisticated. And this is true. The customers, the Facebook users or Google users, are ultimately not disadvantaged by their monopolies. And this is now we are speaking about moving from this relatively simple triangle into very profound and deep policy discussions. And those policy discussions mark the beginning of the year, and in particular 3 main trends in March, which I will focus now in more details. Next. the first clear trend, and I'm sure that you're familiar with this, is Cambridge Analytica and Facebook case. I won't spend a lot of time in narrating it, because if you're following public media, you know what's happened. Basically, in brief, the researcher from Cambridge University, not Cambridge Analytica, created up in order to profile, psychologically to profile people with the name "This is my digital life," and he collected data. 270,000 users of the Facebook basically used that app and answered the question. Again, some sort of modest remuneration. It was interesting business model in itself. But what was interesting, that Facebook allowed him through this app to get to have access to almost Facebook data of 50 million Facebook users, quite a few of them in the United States. Now, there are different layers of the Facebook this latest scandal. One is that Facebook was apparently alerted. There are contradicting views, but they were alerted at one point that there is a massive downloading of data by engineers inside the system, and they didn't take any action. They deleted this app in 2015 when it was clear that the scientists who designed the app sold basically data or made data available to Cambridge Analytica for their work. Now, again, there are not clear indication if he got 7 million, there are some indications 7 million euros, or he gave it as a part of joint research project. Anyhow, Cambridge Analytica got into the sort of possession of this data, and they use it for various purposes. They use it in particular for the political advertising, for the support of the Brexit process, and later on for the support of the campaign of ultimately the President Trump. They use this data, and there are details with Steve Bannon being involved in financing, but I won't go into this direction. We will provide you in our newsletter with all the details on that side. What is most interesting for us is how this scandal will affect the digital policy. In what we know is that Mr. Mark Zuckerberg answered, and he basically said, "I'm sorry." That was nice from him, but many sort of observers and citizens, they said it is not enough. His message is more or less, "I'm sorry, but we won't repeat it, and we'll do it well next time." The answers from the policymakers, from parliamentarians, from media involved in policy is that there are basically more or less three types of answers. One, which is in minority, it was an incident, and they will do it somehow technically, let them self-regulate themselves. This is a traditional approach to the internet industry. It is a new industry, don't burden them with regulation, they will do fine. The second approach, which is also emerging in media coverage and in policy analysis, is okay, give them a chance to self-regulate themselves, but make sure that there is a punishment if they don't do it properly. Therefore, okay, you can do it, but next time, I'm sorry, won't be enough as the answer. We'll need to have some sort of sanctions on some measures that will basically be more effective. And third approach, which I would say is dominant, including the developed countries, is that there is a need, that this is a point when the internet industry crossed the Rubicon, and this is the point when basically there is a need for regulation. Governments worldwide, countries worldwide should impose regulation on social media companies. Those are more or less 3 points, and you will see, and we analyzed them. Practically speaking, U.S. Congress invited him for the hearing. European Parliament, UK politicians are particularly active in trying to sort out this discussion. You have ethical, legal, economic, security, consumer protection aspect of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. Now, what is, in my view, particularly important and relevant is that we can do a lot, but ultimately the business model, which was described by this triangle, encourages those companies to collect more data. They encourages those companies because it is inbuilt. They encourage them to share data and encourage them ultimately to monetize this data. Therefore, business model per se is created incentive for potential data breaches. Therefore, we'll have to, on very fundamental level, on the level of, let's say, basic economics, we'll have to revisit that. Are there the mechanism to check and balances mechanism? What are the ways to regulate this type of situation? Maybe one can choose the way that European Union selected, is to introduce really drastic punishments for any sort of data breaches. As you know, on the 25th of May, General Data Protection Regulation will be introduced, and after that point, if there is a breach of the data regulation of the European Union, the fine will be up to the 4% of the global turnover or revenue of those companies. Therefore, what's happened with Google Analytics, with Cambridge Analytics and the Facebook, is that the whole field is in flux. The traditional views, don't regulate, stay away from the internet companies, is to the large extent passé. Now the question is, to what extent one has to regulate internet companies, in this case Facebook, but there is obviously a spillover effect on the other companies in the institution. And we come to the second trend, which is almost sequential to what happened with with the Cambridge Analytics and you see Freudian slip probably, because Google is collecting even more information than Facebook. And what's happened is that we have the second trend, the major trend, is the question of taxation. This was an incident, a breach of privacy, but ultimately the economic issue which is discussed worldwide is the question of taxation. And here we have an extremely interesting timing with the two dynamics, one in the European Commission and the other in OECD. OECD was supposed to issue the report in April, and they, which is not typical for international organizations, they basically published their report before the deadline which was supposed. And the main reason was that European Union changed their dynamics. European Union published the new report, new proposal on taxation, and in that interim period, OECD decided to move forward with their report, which is 220 pages report, and I just commented from the all good lesson that I learned from the Yes Minister series, is the more controversial issue is the more pages you put into it, and I will reflect on that in a few minutes. But you see that some wisdoms are as old as humanity. Now, what is in gist? What is the core of these two proposals? European Union faced the problem of the increasing pressure on member states to do something with the taxation problem, in particular from France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. You have more or less two camps in the European Union. On one side, these big countries who would like to sort out the problem of taxation, and on the other side, the countries which are host of the major internet companies like Ireland, Luxembourg, to some extent Malta, and smaller countries. Therefore, there is this dynamics between these two players. If you can recall our briefings last year, it started with the Estonian presidency, and there was the summit in Tallinn and the discussion about what to do with this. Now, what is interesting is that this proposal didn't get lost in the meanders of the EU Brussels policy. It is coming to the forefront. Therefore, European Commission came with a proposal proposing long-term solution and interim solution. That was very, very interesting, because the discussion currently is can be very broad and prolonged, and because the issue is very delicate, how to allocate the transactions and how to tax them. Therefore, European Union said, fine, we are going to have a long-term solution, but we'll have also immediate solution. Therefore, they will put some sort of a carrot and stick to the global community and internet companies. Immediate long-term solution is that profit should be taxed, profit, not revenue, and you will see later on the interim solution on the revenue, should be taxed at the place where it is generated. Now, easy to say, difficult to implement, and they introduce two concepts of the taxable digital presence and the virtual permanent establishment of internet companies, and introduce three criteria. If the internet company fulfill one of these three criteria, it will be considered to have a digital presence in particular territory. First criteria is it exceeds a threshold of 7 million in annual revenues in a member state. First, which some will fulfill. 7, it has more than 100,000 users in a member state in a taxable year. I think more or less, let's say for Facebook or Google, all European Union member states will fulfill, with exception of Malta and maybe Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing.
The smaller countries.
And the third criteria is to have over 3,000 business contracts for digital services between company and business users in particular jurisdiction and territory. Therefore, they say, okay, those are our proposals, and we want profit to be taxed according to this virtual digital presence. Easy to say, principles are there, but as you can imagine, and we can discuss, it will be quite difficult to implement when it comes to the really pinpoint where the profit is made. But they say, fine, okay, we'll spend quite some time discussing it, but in the meantime, we need immediate interim tax. Immediate interim tax will basically tax the revenue of internet companies in value creation, and this is again, as you can see, there are many topics for PhDs for the students. Selling online advertising space, digital intermediary activities like Uber, and taxing revenue generated from the sale of data generated from user-provided information. It means more or less anything under the digital sun, Facebook, Google, and other activities. And they suggested a tax of 3% of the revenue in the European Union, which is quite considerable taxing. Therefore, this is European Union approach. Here is our idea. Let us discuss. We know that there are open issues, but we have to move fast. In order to move fast, we'll tax your revenue 3%. This is more or less in the simplification, the process what they're doing. Now, while European Union was moving faster than anyone expect, OECD got caught in a way with a much slower process, which is understandable. They have more member states, including member states that have a different view. And more or less their report describes complexity of the issues. And it is excellent academic material. On 220 pages, you have a lot of data. And it highlights lack of consensus with the three groups of the states. Now, it is a typical international organization report when you say some states do this, others that, and we try to dig out what are the states that are for one view, second and third where we couldn't find indication. But now, there are three views. One group of the states says basically, internet current taxation system, global international taxation system is fine, we don't need to change. It's more or less here and there we can make a few tweaks, but we can go ahead with that. You can guess what are the states who are arguing for this view. Second group of states argue no, digital is the right moment to do profound change of overall internet tax system, and let us use this opportunity. It is a time for considerable and profound reform of the overall system. They want to change basically global internet taxation system. And the third group of states, and it would be interesting academic exercise, who are these states, are in between. He said, okay, principles of international taxation systems are fine, we're happy with that, but we have to adjust in some industries, like industries around the monetarization of data. This is what is in essence the summary of the OECD report. 3 schools of thought, and they are basically asking for the more time to discuss that. I'm afraid that they won't have enough time, because European Union will be accepting at the next Council meeting the new taxation regulation, and then it will go to the Parliament for consultations, and we can expect some implementation till the end of the year. Therefore, there will be acceleration of this discussion. This is about the second trend, taxation, and then we have the third trend, major trend, which is related to what Steph described about artificial intelligence. And this trend is again, mix of philosophical, legal, and practical relevance. It's related to the accident, basically first fatal accident in Arizona, where the driverless car, not necessarily driverless cars, there was a driver who was sitting in the car, but he was basically checking his messages on the SMS or whatever he was using, hit the pedestrian, the lady who suddenly moved with her bike, and it was a fatal. She died in the hospital, and it raised a lot of attention in the international media. On the first glance, it sounds a bit, on the really ethical or philosophical level, it sounds a bit strange, because we have the major sort of causalities of the pedestrians all over the world. The statistics is in tens of thousands, and suddenly one incident raised such a high attention. Now, one can discuss it philosophically. Are we going to give the more sort of ethical leeway to the individuals when they make mistake and they create such a fatal incidents? And are we going to be the less flexible when it comes to machines? This is general issue, and I'm sure there will be a lot of discussions in months ahead on the ethics and artificial intelligence. What was a practical question here is, to what extent the regulators will allow companies to use the streets of their cities, particularly in the United States, for this experiment, and under what regulations? This is the first question. Therefore, regulators now in Arizona, in other countries, they more or less stopped the current experiments, although in all of those experiments there was a driver sitting with the possibility to take over the control of a driverless car. Safety driver. This is the first question. Then second question is much broader: to what extent and how to regulate autonomous vehicles ahead of us. Therefore, the first one is related to those sort of experimental drives in cities. Should it be allowed? Under what conditions? And second one is related to the question if how to regulate safety of cars in the future. And UK started the review of current regulation to allow for widespread introduction of self-driving vehicles. Those are more or less three trends. General context is digital is becoming prominent on the cover page of The Economist, but also in the meetings worldwide. The second is how to solve the problem of this triangle around one issue: what to do with our data, Cambridge Analytica and Facebook scandal, taxation, and then the third issue is autonomous car accident and security issues. We can come later on in the discussion time, and we can discuss these points, which are really interesting for the society as a whole. But before we move there, I would like to invite Steph to continue with other points.
Yeah. Thank you, Jovan. Thank you for the comprehensive analysis of the first quarter and the trends in March. We look towards April, and quite a few events taking place, some of them in Geneva. I'll just mention the UNCTAD e-commerce week, which will take place between the 16th and the 20th of April. We will once again have a just-in-time reporting from the digital policy sessions at UNCTAD, and as usual we will upload the summaries from the sessions on the observatory and prepare the final summary right after UNCTAD. Other events, this is just what you see on the PowerPoint are just the main events in April, but on the observatory, in the event section, you have the whole list of the global events taking place related to digital policy, and also the tool. And here I'll mention the deadliner tool, which will allow you to keep track of the deadlines related to the event, whether it is the start of the event or related to other deadlines, calls for papers, other applications. So it is quite an effective tool, and many people are using it. So I just wanted to mention it here also. Updates from the GIP and Diplo. So the report I mentioned, the report from WISIS, and the report from the e-commerce week that's coming up. We will have the newsletter coming out this week. So the newsletter will look at the text proposals, and we'll also look at the Cambridge Analytica incident and take a look at the different consequences of that incident. More or less what Jovan was describing here, but it will go more in depth with the links to the sources where you can read even more in depth on that. We will also launch the course for in New York, the Intro to IG course, and this Jovan, in fact, will be in the States in the second week of April. I don't know if you want to mention anything related to that.
In addition to the course, which will be launched on 10th of April in New York for New York-based diplomats, because we noticed that there are more and more discussion in UN in New York on digital issues, and what we have been doing over the last few years in Geneva, we would like also to do in New York, to provide just-in-time courses and to help diplomatic community in New York to have a better grasp of digital issues. And we'll have also launch of our report, how countries interact with the Bay Area internet industry, on the 12th of April in San Francisco at Swissnex in San Francisco. The title of the event is Tech Diplomacy, How Countries Interact with the Internet Industry in the Bay Area. It's quite an interesting report, mapping the different approaches that countries use, from the consulates to the innovation center, investment houses. Some countries cover the Bay Area from Washington, especially smaller countries, but that will be the main aim, to see how countries interact with this important part of the global economy. Therefore, on the 12th of April, if you happen to be in San Francisco, please join us for the Swissnex presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jovan. And then at the end of April, we'll have well, not quite at the end, because in April, the last Tuesday is actually on the 24th. We'll have the April briefing on internet governance as usual. And I think that brings us to the end of the activities we have in store for the last week of March and in April. So I think we can open the floor for questions from our in situ colleagues here and online also. If you have questions, please do ask them, and Roxana will forward them. And then we will continue online with the regional updates. But let's take the questions here.
Yeah, time for questions.
So I don't know. Is there any connection with what is being oftentimes now blamed on the Russians of having meddled in the West with sophisticated IT means? Is the whole security apparatus at all involved in collecting data? It used to be. But it somehow now got sidelined. At least I don't know what the heck is going on anymore. But there used to be espionage done by the Americans, by the French, and that's public knowledge. Is anything of this still happening? Should we factor that back into the picture, which at the moment it's all Facebook, it's all commercial, and how they trespass or do things which they're not supposed to do. But what about the military, the security side of sophisticated digital means? Has that somehow disappeared and they closed shop? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but that's my question. Thank you.
Well, as always, complex question from Raymond. Thank you, but I think it's a legitimate question, and I will explain with one anecdote and then concretely answer as far as based on the public information that we have. After the Snowden revelation, there was a conference Southwest, the major digital gathering in the United States, and I was following it carefully. And there was a Snowden intervention from Moscow online, and it triggered ovation it's attended usually by geeks, computer programmers, people involved in internet industry. It triggered ovations in the room because he was a sort of hero. He revealed the counterculture was very strong. And then I followed it and I tried to see what is the next session after Snowden session. Snowden explained what's happened, and the title of the next session is Data Mining and Data Analysis as the Core of the Business Model. Therefore, the same people that were basically praising the Snowden for the security revelation then sat in the room and basically say, okay, we are doing the same, but for business purposes. Now, this interplay within this triangle between security consideration and the business consideration is extremely interesting for research. Now, what we know after the Snowden revelation was basically that there were some regulations introduced in the United States by Obama administration, which definitely didn't stop the basic collection of data, but made it more sort of regulated. But apart from that, another trend, which was, by the way, proposed by both Snowden and Assange, was that instead of waiting for governments to protect the citizens, companies and citizens should start using encryption as a way of protecting their communication. Now you have quite powerful applications like Telegraph, like WhatsApp to some extent, which have end-to-end encryption. You have the company Proton Mail, which is based here in Geneva, and which was mentioned in one of these developments about Cambridge Analytica, because Cambridge Analytica uses a Proton Mail. And one of the arguments is that Proton Mail deletes messages once they are seen, if you choose that option. And they said we don't have any more evidence because email is deleted. Now, is it deleted? Is it saved? To what extent? Should companies keep some records? There are many, many issues. But the fact that it seems to be effective, this crypto protection, is noticed in the complaints of governments worldwide. The Five Eye governments, the United States, Australia, who have this security cooperation, had a meeting last year in Australia, and they said we cannot continue this way. We cannot basically crack increasing level of the encrypted communication. Therefore, we don't have the details of what's going on, but what we see based on the reaction of these governments and complaints that they cannot make a surveillance for including justified reasons, it seems that it is working to some extent. Therefore, this is more or less the current situation. Some measures taken by the Obama administration, I don't think that they were sufficient to stop mass surveillance. We don't know what's going on with the NSA, France and Russian, Chinese, all governments worldwide. What we know that governments are complaining that they cannot have access to the communication, and they are basically asking for regulation that will force the companies like the Telegraph or WhatsApp to basically reveal or create the backdoor for justified access to data. In the United States, Congress is discussing the Cloud Act. Cloud Act should simplify governments which are testified by the US Congress to get access to the data from Google and Facebook for investigation. If they are certified based on the human rights protection, data protection, they may get direct access, not going through the long process of mutual legal assistance treaties, which can take months and they're completely unusable for digital era. Therefore, the Cloud Act is currently discussed in the US Congress. This is more or less, and Cloud Act may require some sort of backdoor access. Ultimate question is, if somebody knocks on the door of Facebook or other companies and say, okay, or Proton Mail, and ask for access to data via subpoena or sort of can they say, no, we're sorry, it is encrypted and we cannot have access to data? This is the legal issue. Rather long answer, but I hope comprehensive enough to understand the current situation. We have a question. Yeah.
Yes, hello, and thank you so much for the briefing, Jovan and Steph. My name is Mats Fritzberger. I'm a Young Leaders Fellow of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, and I also happen to be an alumnus of the Asia... What's that?
Welcome.
Thank you. And I also happen to be an alumnus of the Asia-Europe Public Diplomacy Training Initiative. I was wondering, if we look at the current diplomatic efforts concerning Syria, and in particular at the moment Eastern Ghouta, it's of course evident there are a really active online and digital dimension when it comes to the use of social media in the interaction between the actors involved on the ground and civil society on the other side. But I was wondering, have you found a digital dimension to the current diplomatic efforts in the situation around Eastern Ghouta, basically? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Thank you, Mats, and it's really great to have you today here and to have you in Geneva and with us. I don't know details about the crisis. I'm following it on as a citizen, what's going on. I can make two reflections which are related to the work that we are basically doing in this field. One is related to humanitarian field, and we know that ICRC and other actors in the field are taking very seriously protection of data of people involved, refugees or people who are basically somehow involved in the overall crisis. Therefore, security, protection of data is very often the question of the life and death in this situation. Therefore, digitalization of humanitarian sector is moving very fast, with more people relying on mobile, on the tweets and other. This is, let's say, humanitarian aspect. And another aspect which is very important is mediation aspect. And let's say it could be political aspect. We had the event on the cyber mediation here at Geneva Internet Platform with our partners from the UN, from the Swiss Peace and Humanitarian Dialogue here in Geneva. And what we more or less concluded is that digital is playing an extremely important role in shaping the space for potential mediation and political negotiations by both creating the atmosphere which could be prone for mediation and delivering back the results of the mediation. Therefore, those are rather general answers because I don't know the details. I'm sure that people who are following that they can make more direct link between what's going on in social media and developments on the ground, because it's usual dynamics that social media developments are following the developments of the ground. Unfortunately, very often negative ones, with the human causalities and the horror that this type of conflict bring. But I'm not I don't have a detailed study on that. I can reflect on humanitarian aspect and security of data and potential of the mediation where the social media can play an important role.
Thank you for a great summary of what happened. I have 3 points. Cambridge Analytica.
Salman Bal from...
Yeah, sorry. My name is Salman. I'm Salman Bal. I'm from the UN here in Geneva. On Cambridge Analytica, I mean, I just wonder, in a way, traditionally political parties, they were focusing on opinion polls, defining then their strategy, what their campaign should be, and how, and in which parts of the country or in the circumscription to do policy. In a way, Cambridge Analytica is a bit the same. So it's the same political aim using different instruments. In that sense, is it really that revolutionary? Of course, that it goes to a detailed level, yes. But when I, as a user of Facebook, give all my data well, that's also my own responsibility. So where do we have, I mean, we don't talk about the individuals giving their data for free and a maximum of their data. And I think there we have also the individual responsibility. Not of the data, I mean, now when we say, Cambridge Analytica was not allowed to do this and that, and Facebook was not allowed to do this and that. You ask the users of Facebook, most probably 99% would say, so what? I knew Facebook has my data. I have no clue what they are doing with that. And most probably they will say, why not? Now, is there not also, I mean, the political aspect? Let's say we have just had the elections in Russia. If Cambridge Analytica would have helped the opposition in Russia to win the elections, how would the media in the Western world have reacted? How would have the politicians in the West world would have reacted? Would have there been the same reaction to Facebook and Cambridge Analytica? I leave the question open. Thanks.
Oh, I thought Raymond will ask the most difficult question, but now the one is coming. Let me just a few. Nothing is new under the sun. We come your explanation, but in the same time, everything is new under the sun when it comes to the digital issues. We have the opinion polls. We mentioned taxation. We mentioned the jurisdiction issues. And as you can recall, throughout our briefings, we were always insisted that we should be very careful when we say that digital creates completely new dynamics. It is not true. It still reflects the issues of power, politics, economic dynamics, and other issues. But where is the difference and why everything is new under the sun? The second view is that obviously the internet is a huge amplifier. Therefore, the whole traditional, this is the amplifier is probably the key word. The old traditional means and tools, let's say opinion polls, which were basically powerful, but still limited by their physical limitations, are now simply overcome by enormous power, which could be controlled in the few hands with the 50 million accounts. This is the first point. Therefore, that's ultimately the question. Not as a phenomenon per se, but the way how the phenomenon has been amplified. The second point is that question of responsibility. Incidentally, and I will open the brackets, we are starting soon the project with the help of Swiss government on the responsibility of states, companies and individual users. And it will be a very interesting project aimed at creating some sort of Geneva model for responsible behavior in cyberspace. And this issue will be on the table, therefore we'll have to wait till the end of the year for the detailed answer. But like European Commission, let me give you interim answer. I think the individuals are unfairly treated here. Many people will answer, yes, so what? Okay, I give my data, but probably for Manor to know what type of ties I would like to wear, I wouldn't have any problem. But when it comes to important political decisions, especially of the huge consequences for us individually, like Brexit or elections in the major states, it then is changing the complete shape of that Faustian bargain. It is a Faustian bargain. Mephisto can act in whatever way, but we do Faustian bargain. We say, okay, we want easier, nicer life in exchange of giving data. But then this bargain went like with Get it went out of proportions. That's why I would give the benefit of doubt to us as users. And third point, how is it treated politically? It is a political issue. In some cases it is amplified again beyond the proportion. In the other cases it is undermined. I see it as a tool for whatever diplomatic, geostrategical, political battles. And this is used in that way. And it is almost ideal tool because it is mystic. You cannot get into that. You have very little data. This is an interesting aspect. It's a digital phenomenon when you can expect engineering data. And in that there is a lot of mystery. I call it cyber voodoo. In cyber voodoo you can do whatever you want. Nobody can classify it. And it is mix of voodoo, James Bond, and and the lack of information, which I think is not healthy for the stability of global affairs. And more evidence, if there is a need for evidence-based policy making in any field, this is a digital field. And I don't think that it will be that difficult, because we can get the data if there is intention to do it. Therefore, we are currently in the cyber voodoo phase. Hopefully we'll move to the cyber evidence-based phase.
Can I add 2 points to that?
Sure.
Right. I'll add 2 points to that, Salman, because the data that Cambridge Analytica had was not just age or sex or geography, but it was related to the personality. So they were able to target political messages based on how we think about certain things, and they use the personality, the ocean, if I'm not mistaken, it's called, so openness, certain identifiers. So they were quite going into the psychology. So they were able to build, and they were able to learn much more about the individual than just the simple data that we give when we sign up for Facebook, for example. That's the first thing. And the second point is that you mentioned, so what? Not quite sure that a lot of the users feel that way, because the studies that we are looking at, almost half of the respondents of a couple of studies that we were looking at from last year feel that they are at a disadvantage, in the sense that the data exchange, the users are seeing it as an inevitable trade-off. And that, to me, doesn't sound like the equal positioning between the users and the company. So the users are feeling at a disadvantage, because they're not seeing other choices that they have. They're not seeing any other way out. So the only thing that they can do to get the free service is to give their data. So
we have a question here.
Jan Erbgut, I'm a researcher at University of Geneva and lecturing at Geneva School of Diplomacy. And I think your comment is quite right. Advertisement is meant to influence or manipulate people. And political advertisement is meant to manipulate or influence people in their votes. So it's no surprise that a advertisement platform is used to do advertisement. And although there was a breach of a data breach there, it would have worked the same way without this data breach. So there is some kind of influencing going on by using personalized advertisement, which is new. Before we didn't have this kind of personalized advertisement, but only general advertisement. And it was no secret that Facebook and other internet companies are going for the personalized advertisement. This was always their message. The thing is, we have quite a lot of regulation concerning classical advertisement. Of course, we had tobacco advertisement, and we banned it because we thought it's bad. So we need rules for the digital advertising as well, and we need to have a decision how open it has to be, what kind of transparency there has to be, etc. But the issue that somebody uses advertisement to influence a political election is not really a problem. It's what they are doing all the time with all kind of means. And concerning your comment with the secret services, I wonder if they are not doing much more. In Facebook, you have the filter, and the filter will show you certain messages, certain things, and will suppress other things. And I'd be surprised if governments are not trying there to suppress certain information, not make it visible if they don't like it, or push for other informations.
Definitely. What we can do, with wind, I use often that metaphor. We cannot see the wind, but we can see trees moving, and that it seems that it's windy. What we can see that maybe this crypto protection works is the complaints of governments. That's the only three that we are seeing. And we disadvantage our online community. Please, Roxana.
Yes, we also have a question from our online space. It comes from Foncham. Is the accident involving the self-driving car going to affect the development and use of artificial intelligence services? We also had a comment from Nigel, who wanted to know our view on the WSIS forum. So if we have time to address that as well, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. On the question of artificial, or would you like to?
All right, the WSIS, I'll take Nigel's question first, because I think I addressed this partially in the beginning. We saw the couple of trends with regards to the WSIS discussions, and I'll just summarize them again. The first one was that development was more and more connected to the other issues, probably because the new technologies are opening more debate and are bringing the issues closer together. So development not anymore let's say not a bubble, but not anymore under the development access digital divide. It's moving more closely to the other areas. And the second trend that we saw was that at the WSIS forum, the discussions also focused on the mainstream issues, which in previous WSIS discussions were not so much pronounced. So we saw more of that now. So I hope, Nigel, that answers the question. But the report is online, so you can read more of the insights there.
One general, to add to the comment, we are here in more or less IGF versus communities, people who attend this and that. And I think the success of the IGF and versus processes will depend with the speed to what we can adjust to these fast accelerating issues. Because it is not any more issue which is discussed just by these meetings. These issues are discussed in the cafes, in the families worldwide, and generally speaking, there will be growing pressure, I would say, on the VERSIS, IGF, and other bodies and other spaces to react in constructive way and proactive way to some extent to this fast development in digital field. On the artificial intelligence in the autonomous vehicles, I don't think that this trend will be stopped easily. There is a temporary sort of interim ban in a few cities, but there will be. This is such a powerful development with important scientific, economic, and social consequences that they will have just to see how to reduce chances for the future accidents. But the more serious discussion will be on the regulation of the autonomous vehicles once they hit the road without sort of a shadow of security driver. And that's and thank you very much for your excellent comments and contributing to our discussion on political advertising. As you indicated, this has been as old sort of skill as a politics, I would say. We can get back to the sophists and their discussions and their way of framing the arguments, and even in older. Therefore, again, nothing is new under the sun, but that amplifier element is probably something which requires more reflections on regulatory elements. Most of the discussions that we started today during this briefing will stay with us for quite some time, whether they are ethical aspects of the driverless cars, or whether they are question of the amplifier effect of internet technology and developments. Therefore, there is another reason to join us on the 24th of April and the subsequent briefings. And I'll just pass to Steph to wrap it up and give you some time for the corridor discussions and online corridor discussions.
Exactly. Thank you, Jovan, for all the insights shared today. And yes, once again, I join Jovan in inviting you again on the 24th. But meanwhile, for our online community, we'll hear now the regional updates from quite a few.
Thank you, Jovan and Stephanie, for that roundup of in March. Thank you to Roxana for moderating the online discussion and for passing on the questions from our online audience. For our online participants, please stay tuned because we have regional updates coming up. First, we have Amrita, who will be joining us from the Asian continent with some regional updates.
The digital policy in Asia-Pacific in March was predominated by discussions on fake news, freedom of expression, content policy, and digital commerce. In Malaysia, the government met with internet companies to discuss draft laws on fake news and taxation. The draft law on fake news would remove fake news that threatens public order and national security, which is likely to be presented in 2 weeks' time. There are reports of Singapore contemplating to bring in new laws to address the threat of fake news. In Sri Lanka, social media like Facebook and messaging services such as WhatsApp and Viber were blocked following incidents of communal violence in the city of Kandy, where government imposed a state of emergency. A report called Dangers of Digital Surveillance, highlighting issues of digital surveillance on journalists and human rights defenders in Pakistan, was released by Bytes for All, which states that digital surveillance is resulting in self-censorship in the country. A report released by the Internet and Mobile Association of India and Cantor IMRB called Internet in Indic suggests that providing Internet in Indic or local Indian languages would be a key motivator to encourage 23% of non-users to go digital in India, which is approximately 200 million people.
Thank you, Amrita. Now we are going to Claudio Lucena, who will give us updates from Brazil and the Latin American region. Over to you, Claudio.
Hello, friends from Diplo. This month of March, we start the updates for the Latin American and the Caribbean region on a note on how the murder of Rio de Janeiro City Councilor Marielle Franco and her driver Anderson Gomes had in digital rights in the region. Marielle had participated in November 2017 in the national preparatory meeting for the IGF in Brazil on a panel where she discussed the impact of technology in gender, race, and social inequality. After the crime, March 14th, a lawsuit was filed in Brazil demanding 38 videos that, according to Marielle's family, contained attacks on her dignity and memory by associating her with drug dealers and organized crime be removed from the platform YouTube. A judge in Rio has analyzed the request, and out of the 38 videos, she decided that 16 of them actually contained abuse in the exercise of freedom of speech, and demanded YouTube and order YouTube to remove them in 72 hours, a period after which a fine of 1,000 reais will be applied. Apart from that, a pool of civil lawyers, civil rights lawyers in Brazil had offered to identify the same alleged attacks in individual posts in social networks and crowdfund the proposition of lawsuits to fight those attacks. We're yet to see those attacks. We're yet to see the results of those lawsuits. The World Economic Forum has launched March 15th during its São Paulo meeting a platform called Technology for Integrity. The goal is to tap into digital technologies to fight corruption in the countries of the region. The initiative consists of a partnership of 96 global innovators and organizations such as Transparency International and the Inter-American Development Bank. The initiative intends to rebuild confidence and integrity for Latin America from a global perspective, and it will consist of a database of tools, solutions, and best practices to fight corruption, as well as what they call a laboratory of synergies, through which different stakeholders will be able to meet, identify their specific needs when it comes to tackling corruption, and then contacting innovators to deliver the custom and tailored solutions.
Thank you, Claudio. And now we are going to Wanda Perez, who will be giving us updates from the Caribbean region and some updates on capacity building initiatives. Over to you, Wanda.
LACNIC, the Internet Addresses Registry for Latin America and Caribbean, launched an intra-regional IPv4 transfer service aiming to provide the community with relevant information that will simplify IPv4 transfers. This service is available at the LACNIC portal and provides a list of organizations willing to transfer IPv4 blocks, the ones wishing to receive, and organizations willing to serve as facilitators between offering and receiving organizations. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, and the Barbados-based fintech company Bit Inc. signed a memorandum of understanding to conduct a fintech pilot on blockchain technology in the ECCB member countries. The MOU was signed in St. Kitts and Nevis. This pilot pursued to develop a secure, resilient digital payment and settlement platform with embedded regional and global compliance and the issuance of a digital easy currency which will operate alongside physical easy currency. Both companies will work closely to develop, deploy, and test technology which will help to improve the risk profile of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and mitigate against the trends of the risking by the region's correspondent banking partners.
Gracias, Wanda. Now we are going to Grace, who will be giving us updates from Africa, and in particular on Africa Trade Agreement. Grace, please go ahead.
The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement was signed in Kigali, Rwanda in March. AU Chair President Paul Kagame said that the agreement would boost intra-Africa trade. The FTA, once implemented, will rely heavily on digital infrastructure and will expand the digital trade in the continent. The ECOWAS court has found that Gambia's criminal laws on libel, sedition, and false news are an abrogation to freedom of expression, liberty, and movement of its citizens. The court asked the government of Gambia to immediately amend or repeal the speech laws to align them with the country's obligations under international law. And a workplace harassment claim has rocked the Afrinic community. Afrinic is the regional internet registry for Africa. Afrinic board has requested its governance committee to develop terms of reference for an independent commission that will look into the allegations. Afrinic will meet during the Africa Internet Summit in Dakar, Senegal, later this year.
Thank you, Grace. I'd like to thank all of our contributors, Amrita, Claudio, Wanda, and Grace, for the updates from their regions. This brings our March internet briefing to an end. All the developments that Stephanie and Jovan have described at this briefing will be available at our observatory digital watch, which is at dig.watch. Also, you can download our newsletter at dig.watch/newsletter. The recording, the presentation, and the digest will all be available soon.